So, this week we're going to talk about the founder's legal mindset. And our scripture is from Proverbs 22 and verse 3. And it reads in the NIV, "The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty." So, I want to point out something about Proverbs 22, verse 3, that's easy to read past. The prudent person and the simple person are not facing different dangers. They are facing the same one. The difference between them is not the presence or absence of risk in their path, it is whether they were looking for it. The prudent see danger. That is the entire distinction. Not that they possess some special protection that the simple person doesn't. Not that disaster avoids the prudent out of favor. The prudent, they see it because they were looking, and seeing it, they take refuge. The simple, however, they keep going, not because they are reckless or foolish or in some dramatic sense, but because they simply were not looking. The danger was there the whole time. It simply was not perceived until it had already arrived as a penalty rather than a warning. I've spent years sitting across the table from founders and entrepreneurs and leaders at the exact moment that the penalty arrives: the lawsuit, the contract dispute, the trademark conflict, the tax problem that compounds for 3 years before anyone looked at it. And in nearly every case, the danger was visible in advance to anyone who had developed the habit of looking for it. So this week is about developing that habit, not becoming a lawyer, I'm that, but becoming prudent. Legal awareness is a discipline of looking. So I want to correct a misconception up front because I think it keeps a lot of leaders and founders from developing the legal mindset that they actually need. Having a legal mindset does not mean knowing the law. It does not mean that you need a law degree, a working knowledge of contract doctrine, or even the ability to draft your own agreements from scratch. Those are specialized skills, and they belong to specialized professionals. The same way you would not expect a founder to perform their own appendectomy just because they want to be responsible about their health. What a legal mindset actually requires is the discipline of asking a simple question before you act. What could go wrong here? What would I do if it did go wrong? That question, asked consistently, is what separates the founder who sees danger from the founder who keeps going without looking. It does not require legal training, it requires the willingness to pause before signing the agreement, before taking on a particular client, before bringing in a partner, before launching a new offer, and ask whether you have actually thought through what happens if this goes wrong. Most legal problems that reach my desk don't happen because the founder lacked legal knowledge. They happen because no one paused to ask the question at all. So prevention is always cheaper than correction. So I want to give you a principle. Yeah, we are principle people that I have seen confirmed without exception. across years of practice because I think you need to hear it plainly. Legal problems are almost always more expensive to solve than they would have been to prevent. The founder who spends a few $100s on a properly drafted service agreement template, reviewed once by an attorney, spends a fraction of what they would spend defending themselves in a dispute over an ambiguous verbal agreement. The founder who takes the time to register their entity before taking on their first client spends a fraction of what they would spend untangling personal liability after a problem arises while they were operating unprotected. The founder who runs a proper trademark search before building a brand spends a fraction of what they would spend rebranding entirely after they receive a cease and desist letter. So this is not a marginal difference. It is usually an order of magnitude. Prevention measured in the hundreds of dollars and a few hours of attention. Correction is measured in thousands of dollars, months of disruption, and in some cases, damage to the client relationships and to your business reputation that money cannot always fully repair. So the prudent person in our scripture is not described as someone who never encounters danger. They are described as someone who sees it early enough to take refuge before it becomes a penalty. The cost of taking refuge is always smaller than the cost of paying the penalty, always. So I do want to push back on the framing that I think limits most founders when we talk about this topic. Legal thinking is often presented and often experienced as purely defensive, a necessary evil, so to speak. It's the unpleasant work of protecting yourself from worst case scenarios that probably will not happen anyway. And that framing, that mindset makes legal awareness feel like fear management, which makes it easy to deprioritize when there are more exciting things to build. But the founders that I have watched build the most durable, most fundable, most partnership ready enterprises do not relate to legal structure defensively. They use it offensively as a tool that advances the mission rather than merely protecting it. So, a well structured partnership agreement does not just prevent a future dispute, it enables a partnership to move forward with confidence and speed because both parties know exactly what they have agreed to. So, a clear contract does not just protect you from non payment, it allows you to take on larger clients and bigger opportunities because you can demonstrate the professional credibility from the first interaction. And protected intellectual property does not just prevent infringement, it becomes a license, an asset that you can monetize, leverage, and even sell. So the legal mindset fully developed is not the mindset of someone hiding from risk. It is the mindset of someone who has built the structural confidence to move forward toward opportunity faster than the founder who is still operating without that structure. So I want to close with some uh, a practical application because it's the part that actually determines whether the legal mindset protects you or gives you a false confidence. And that can happen too. You do not need to become a lawyer again, and you do not need to have an AI lawyer either, because that is itself problematic. But you do need to understand the basic structures your business depends on, your entity, your contracts, your intellectual property, and your compliance obligations. You need to know those well enough to recognize when a question you are facing has moved beyond what you can safely answer yourself. You should have internal protocols. But you also need to recognize that having these internal protocols is an actual skill. Not knowing every answer, but knowing which questions are simple enough for you to handle with general knowledge and good judgment, and which ones require a professional who has been trained specifically to navigate that terrain. So, a question like, should I have a written agreement with this client, does not require an attorney to answer. You know this. The answer is always yes. A question like, my business partner wants to restructure our ownership percentages, and I'm not sure what the tax implications are. That's exactly the kind of question that does require professional counsel, because the cost of guessing wrong is significant, and the complexity exceeds what the general business knowledge can reliably navigate. So the prudent founder is not the one who never needs a lawyer. It is the one who recognizes that there are moments that they do, and that they will seek counsel before the simple keeps going and pays the penalty that the prudent would have avoided. So this week, in your time of reflection, I want you to ask yourself, where in my business right now am I having the keep going mindset without having paused to ask what could go wrong? And walk through your current operations honestly. Look at your contracts, look at your client relationships, look at your entity structure, and of course, your intellectual property. And is there a place where you have not actually looked for danger simply because looking felt uncomfortable, or looking felt like you weren't having faith, or looking because so far things have been going good? So you don't look. I want you to think about those things deeply this week, and answer that for yourself in your journaling. And then I also want you to ask yourself, is there a question currently sitting in my business that has quietly moved beyond what I can safely answer myself? Because you need to be honest about the difference between general knowledge, because you should have general business knowledge about your business, and know the difference from when you genuinely require a professional legal counsel. So if there is a question that you may have been winging it, what is keeping you from seeking that counsel? Is it cost? I hear that a lot. Is it time? Is it uncertainty about who to ask? Whatever it is, address that obstacle directly this week, because the prudent see danger and take refuge. Develop the habit of looking and the wisdom to know when what you see requires more than your own judgment and more than an AI prompt to help you navigate. All right. So if there is a question that you've been sitting on, something that feels like it might need legal counsel, but you have not yet asked anyone, ask me. This is your week. You get one free question. So hit me up in your comments and I'll be certain to respond because naming the question out loud when we deal with it up front makes seeking the answer actually possible. All right. And so, I couldn't resist this week as we are looking at the founder's legal mindset that we definitely want to make sure that you have some tips as your executive counsel. So, tip number one, you want to develop the simple habit of running a risk check before any significant business decision. You want to ask, what could go wrong here? What would I do if something did go wrong? It's a very simple question, but you want to ask it every time you're going to make a significant business decision. If you ask this consistently, whenever a situation arises that will change the nature of your relationships with a client or a partner or a vendor, or if you want to launch a new service, you want to add, or a new product, if you've made something new, what could go wrong here? Figure that out. And you can um, then you'll be able to more better navigate. So it doesn't require you to have legal training. It requires you to have the discipline of pausing before acting. Build this into your decision-making process and make it a standard habit and not a one-time exercise this week, all right? And then the second tip is I want you to know the difference between questions you can answer with sound business judgment, and that is a thing. Sound business judgment is a legal concept. I want you to know the difference between that and the difference between questions that require professional legal counsel. So here's a general guide. Questions about whether to put something in writing or how to communicate clearly with a client or even how to structure your own internal processes are usually within your own business judgment. But questions that involve ownership structure changes, tax implications of business decisions, or disputes that have escalated beyond a simple conversation with the other party, or any situation that involves potential liability with a third party. Those are the kind that warrant a consultation with an attorney before you proceed. So, when in doubt, a single consultation is almost always less expensive than guessing wrong on your judgment. All right. So enact those two habits. You want to pause before something is major, and you want to know the difference between something that you can easily handle because of business practices and when something has escalated that you need further guidance. Make that your legal mindset, and you'll be the prudent one. All right. So that's it for this week. Next week, we are almost halfway there. We have 1 week to go. But next week, we're going to deal with your business plan as a prophetic document. Yes. Why writing the plan reveals what you do not yet know. right? It's a plan. And so there are specific sections that your business plan should have, and we're going to talk about them and how to treat the gaps that you are finding. So tune in for next week. That's what we'll be working on. But you have your homework for this week. Let's get it done.